So, a surprising score on Train?
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, CLG had actually had some pretty mixed results on Train coming into this. Meanwhile, we saw some very successful Train play out of Liquid in New York. So I certainly didn't see it going this way. But I mean, CLG, they looked really strong. I mean, they stuck to kind of what they normally do, like a lot of set pieces, they tried to throw some fakes into it as well. And they just out-traded Liquid across the board. You could really see a team that was just firing on all cylinders. Even a player like Ethan, who had a slow start, really recovered, particularly in the second half. So yeah, I mean, that was really brilliant from CLG.
So, speaking of firing on all cylinders, Dan, you didn't think that CLG had many, if any, cylinders to fire on, so...
Well, I mean, they're quite a mixed bag, and it's kind of a weird team still at the moment for me. Like, consistency is always, like, with teams like that especially, it's like a really big deal, because you don't, some of the players aren't proven yet from over time in offline events, and online is where they're going to do it, if they're going to do it, but it's never easy to predict when that's going to happen. But they actually, it felt like that match, everything kind of did come together, that they've been practicing clearly, because actually what they did show was a lot of structure to their game, and lots of stuff worked, lots of stuff didn't, but the individual skill was up there to be the fullback, and we saw, especially like from players like Ethan, the individual skill was there in spades, actually.
Speaking of which, I think we have a highlight to show of Ethan earlier on. Talk us through this, Dust.
Yeah, so this is just right after Ethan already got an ace on an eco round. He just plays the spools, and that third kill he gets on Pimp was just so well done. I mean, the first guy you can see is coming out. They're both blind. Ethan recovers a little bit better. He lines up too, but that third kill, Pimp not being able to get that trade just seemed like kind of the key moment in that round. And again, we're pointing this out because Ethan did have that slow start. He was the one player on CLG that seemed to not find his footing from the beginning, but when you see him making plays like that in the second half to close out the game, that's the big thing, right? Like, you get the lead, but can you close? And I felt like Ethan was a big factor in them making sure they shut it down and kept the W.
CLG are a team that I have often criticized for lacking attention to detail, and when I've questioned them about it, that they've had unexpected responses, to put it kindly. But it looks like they had more attention to detail in this match, like the force buy round and the second round, where they had a wall of smokes to help their path to the site to get a bomb plant, for example. And I mean, these are things that you can pick up from another team doing it, for example. But to look at it and put it into practice is something that you might not have seen from them in the past. So it seems there is renewed effort from them, which I like from what I've seen today.
The funny thing is that even at some of the peaks of success of some of the past CLG lineups with the likes of JDM, like when he was back on that team, when that team was doing well, when they were qualifying for majors and so on, it was still one of the teams that was the hardest for me to watch back in that period, like along with Mouse Sports, because it's like you have a team which has a lot of ability, but it feels like, as you say, their heads aren't really the right place as to how to like run the team. And there's obviously like they don't have necessarily like the focus on tactics and strategy, and maybe even the discipline in practices to actually really nail it. But it did feel like this was a better CLG to watch from that perspective. I feel like there's a framework at play, which for me is an improvement for CLG.
And it's a different one too, right? I mean, when you think about when they got better under Peter's direction, it was that slow, methodical style that they really relied on, where when you look at this version of CLG under Hazed, it is very execute-oriented. And sometimes it doesn't work when they play against other really good train teams in NA, like when they've lost to like Cloud9 and Optic and such. But they go up against Liquid, who don't really play train too often. I mean, I know they look good in New York, but they didn't really touch it outside of that. And you see them being able to run these really crisp executes, and they were just trading better. I mean, you have Koosta back on the op. I know that's something you brought up in the broadcast. Right now, it seems only map specific, so I don't know if he's like slowly transitioning into doing it full time. But on this map, it certainly worked on the terrorist side, whereas you did see Cutler kind of pick it up on the CT. So I think they're still trying to figure that out. But, I mean, yeah, this is a good win. It's just the problem with CLG is they've had a couple of these, right? They took a map off Liquid in EPL. They beat Energy in Toronto. They have these one-off results that make you think, oh, okay, like we're getting somewhere. But then they don't follow it up. And so that's kind of the big thing we have to keep an eye on going forward for this team.
So the last match of today is going to be on Dust 2 between the same two teams. That's coming up after the break. We'll see you back here soon.